can join the RMT's General Secretary, Mick Lynch, now, who joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Mr Lynch.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So, obviously, as Sean just announced, there's a couple more days of strike action have been announced by you and by your union. Can you just explain why you feel this is necessary?
Well, we've been negotiating with the companies, both Network Rail and the train operators, for several months now. We haven't had an offer at all from the train operating companies, so there's no deal to be had there. We've made some progress with Network Rail, but the pitch of the deal isn't in the right place. We've still got some problems to sort out with the changes they want to make to our members' working conditions and terms and conditions. And, of course, the money that they're offering undervalues completely the changes that they want to make to our people. So we haven't had a pay rise for 2 or 3 years for most of our people, and the money that's on the table now is not adequate. And indeed, in the train operating companies, there's no money on the table at all.
Grant Shapps has tweeted about this, the Transport Secretary. He says that a pay deal worth up to 8% over 2 years was offered. He said today their leadership rejected it without even putting it to their members and instead called another strike. He says RMT bosses aren't interested in finding a solution. They just want to cause misery to the travelling public. So you are not happy with a pay deal worth up to 8% over 2 years?
Well, only if you believe what Grant Shapps says, and that's a problem for most people. This is a pay deal that's over 3 years because we didn't get a pay deal last year. And the 8% that they say they're offering is conditional. It's not an automatic 8%. Inflation today, the retail price index is 11.7. So even if all of that was delivered, it wouldn't meet the cost of living just for this year. And next year, it's very likely that the cost of living will be in double digits as well. So we could end up with inflation over those 3 years in excess of 20%, and we might be offered 8%. So that's a long way short of where we need to be. Our members are struggling like everyone else.
Yeah.
But you've got half of the people in this dispute work for train operating companies, and there's no offer whatsoever. And they already haven't had a pay rise for 3 years. So we could be going into 4 years where inflation may have been way above 20%, and we won't have a deal. Plus, they want to attack the pensions, and they want to attack their terms and conditions and get rid of thousands of people.
As you know, obviously, it's been an unprecedented couple of years with the pandemic, and lots of other groups will say, look, we haven't had pay rises either, and the idea of tracking a pay rise to inflation right now just isn't realistic. What do you say to people who would suggest that?
Well, it's realistic for everyone in this country to get a pay rise. Corporate Britain is making vast profits. We've got more billionaires than we've ever had. The super rich are doing very well, thank you very much. And all British workers need a pay rise. And if our members don't get a pay rise, this idea that cleaners and nurses and caterers and doctors, retail workers are going to get a pay rise is a nonsense. What British workers need is a campaign to get a square deal off corporate Britain, and they're not getting it at the moment. People are storing up profits, they're paying out dividends, and they're not prepared to pay workers the correct rate for their labour. That's got to be addressed, and we need a redistribution of wealth in this country because it's all being stored by the people at the top and it's being taken away from the people at the bottom.
We have lots of sympathy for your cause and lots of people who are very frustrated by the cause, as I'm sure you have faced daily. Obviously, these most recent strikes you've announced will happen during the school holidays now, so you're going to be affecting people's plans. Do you have sympathy for some of those families out there who now are going to have to change their plans and their plans are going to be affected? And we've all been through a very difficult time, and it might be the first time they're going to get a chance to go away and suddenly there'll be a rail strike which is going to stop that.
Well, it's not suddenly. We give 2 weeks' notice of the first phase, and it's another 4 or 5 weeks until the next phase. There's plenty of time to negotiate. We do feel sorry for people who are going to be affected. We've got no grudge against working people trying to go about their lives or take their holidays. But the fact is, our members are struggling as well. They've not had this pay rise, and they are struggling to pay their bills. They will lose their money during these strikes if they go ahead. And what we need to do is concentrate on getting a deal. And Grant Shapps needs to allow these companies to negotiate. He needs to fund the railways properly, as the government needs to fund all our public services properly.
Well, I think he has said that he denies the fact. I know you've been talking about this sort of third-party negotiation. He has denied that, hasn't he? What about when these talks resume?
Well, it's not true, though, is it? That's completely untrue.
Well, I mean, you say one thing and he says the other. But
no, it's written into the contract, Charlotte, that he is directly responsible for industrial
Well, yeah, but he wants
railway.
the negotiation.
So he's not telling the truth.
OK, well,
as usual.
That's what you say. He has denied that, though.
No,
what about
it's
when
in the contracts.
What about when the talks resume, though? Because everybody wants to get this sorted out. Nobody wants, holidays and train travel to be disrupted. Numbers are already going down for the people that use the trains. There's the accusation, isn't there, that this is damaging the whole use of the train system by doing this, because people get so fed up with strike after strike after strike. So when is this going to be sorted out?
Well, we want to negotiate that, but the fact is that the person who's in charge of the negotiations is Grant Shapps. It's written into the contracts with the train operating companies that he's directly responsible for industrial relations, and he has a veto on anything that they offer. So he's controlling those negotiations. So what he needs to do is take his hands off the train operating companies and Network Rail and let them negotiate. We will be contacting the companies today to set up more meetings. But he is the person that's causing these strikes, and he is undermining the negotiations every day he sits in his office. He clearly doesn't want to be in that office. He wanted to be Prime Minister earlier in the week, and that collapsed. So he needs to pay attention to this dispute and allow a resolution through proper funding of the railways and stopping him vetoing a proper negotiation between us and the companies.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there. Mick Lynch, thanks for joining us this morning. Lots of you getting in touch with this. Henry says full support for our rail workers. Strike action is the last resort, but greedy employers push workers into this. And then Dan on the other side have no compassion for these train drivers. They are paid nearly twice the median salary in the UK with very good terms and conditions. I support the strikes for the lower paid workers in the railway, but the drivers can't justify strike for more pay. Thank you for those comments as well.